Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to the class Professional Practices in Software Development, semester fall 2020 in the ODL mode. Let's start today's class. First, I'm going to share, as usual, our curriculum. As you can see that today we have to start health and safety at workplace. And also the professional communication or employee communication. These topics we will cover from chapter 9 of Frank Bott. This chapter we will cover completely. And also the employee communication section we will study from the reference book Sara Base chapter 6. So let's start today's topic. So as you can see on the screen, that from the textbook, which is Professional Issues in Software Engineering by Frank Bott, we are going to cover chapter 9 today. So this is a rather comparatively easier topic and interesting as well. It is health and safety at workplace. Now, you will see in this chapter that the writer covers health and safety at workplace laws in several countries around the world, which are applicable with minor variations in the South Asian countries. Because in software engineering or computing industry, usually the software projects are cross-national. It is not like other industries, which is divided by export industry and the local industry. A software house is open to all through the internet, like a global village, and you can pick any order from around the world, or anybody can approach you to develop some certain software. Therefore, it is quite necessary to go through the laws of various countries around the world to see what regulations apply in the industry. So let's start the chapter. As you can see, 9.1 relates to the problem statement of this chapter, which is health and safety at work usually only hits the headlines when there is a major disaster. And that's quite true. Unless something happens, nobody bothers what the law is, or it do not comes even in media. If there is a provision of a disaster, or at some place health and safety laws and regulations are not followed, then media is not going to cover that unless there is a disaster, and then it will all the media houses will go there, and all the regulating agencies will go there, and there will be a hype. So this is quite true. If you don't plan, then you plan to fail. So health and safety shouldn't be taken lightly. Now you see the statistics in the second paragraph. The number of fatal accidents at work has fallen sharply since the beginning of 1970s, because that was the area when regulations were strictly implemented in industrial nations. But still around 200 employees each year die as a result of accidents at work, and it's a significant number of people losing their lives during work activities. Even after following these health and safety practices, still people lose their life, and the number is roughly around 200, and which is increasing actually. This statistics is from a 1995 survey. Definitely this number now increased. Okay, another note is that although inherently more dangerous than others, the average worker does not expect to be at increased risk by the simple act of going to work until, of course, an accident occurs. So it's not necessarily that because accident occurs at work, so therefore people should not work. So this is not a logical argument. Unless some accident happens, we have to work. Like, we don't stop driving because if you don't drive, there will be no accident. But it doesn't make any sense that you will not drive because there are accidents. The logical argument would be that drive carefully. If you are driving a two-wheeler, then wear your safety gears and helmet. And if you're driving a four-wheeler, then either two or four-wheeler, you have to follow the traffic laws. Okay. So what this chapter contains, it will consider the law relating to health and safety at work, discuss possible methods of achieving safety in practice, and highlight some of the problems in doing so. So this is what this chapter will cover, and it is very interesting chapter. Well, 9.2 relate to the historical background, and whenever we study the historical background in the Frank Bott Professional Issues in Software Engineering book, it always referred to the Industrial Revolution in several chapters because it was the time when people started migrating from their agricultural farms to the factories in the metropolis, and the lifestyle of people changed, and the new dimension, the new laws. As we discussed in ethics chapter, that laws emerge after the Industrial Revolution because these issues were not present in the agricultural age before industrial revolution. So same applies to the health and safety at workplace. After the industrial revolution, soon it became apparent that safe working conditions in the new mills and factories, which were the response to the increased technological development in the era, would not be established without a suitable legal framework to ensure compliance. Okay, so you see that soon after industrial revolution, it was felt that people's safety is paramount, and factories are not taking into consideration the fact of public safety. Um, now is an age of information media, but in the 18th and 19th or late 17th century and 18th and 19th century, you can imagine that even the press the newspaper were not widely distributed around the world. So if some disaster happens, it remains to a certain locality. And if something happened like in Bengal, people in Punjab may have no idea in the 18th or 19th century what happened and what were the causes or reasons. So therefore, it was a necessity to create laws. The government created certain acts so that people interest could be safeguarded. The first such act was passed in 1802, particularly to safeguard young people in textile mills. It was a time in the Western culture, in Western developed countries, that child labor was not prohibited. And when I was preparing your lecture yesterday, I was watching a case study at YouTube link that in a coal mine in Wales, United Kingdom, a disaster occurred in 1844 where 40 miners died in a coal mine which was under the river, and it contains name of children as young as 10 and 11 years old, and name of women as well that were disguised. Although law prohibited working of women into mines in United Kingdom in 1844, however, still there were female miners included in the list of people died in that accident, and there were several children as young as 10 and 11 years old. So that's why this was an act that safeguarded especially young people, including the children who work in textile mills. And it was a time when women were not allowed to vote. Women were not allowed to vote in West till after World War One. So this was the first time an act was passed for health and safety at workplace in 1802. And we fast forward to report of Robbins Committee in 1972, the second big development internationally in the health and safety at workplace came. First, it was the Act in 1802. Then it was the Robbins Committee report in 1972. It was a comprehensive report which have following important points. An act for the preservation of the health and morals of apprentices and other employed in cotton and other mills. Examples include agricultural safety and offices, shops, and railways premises Act 1963 and the Nuclear Installation Act 1965. So Robbins Committee emphasized on these areas of health and safety and work, and it was a second notable legal aspect after 1802, after the Industrial Revolution, when first act came internationally. Uh, okay, and now it is covering Robbins Committee. The summary of Robbins Committee report is highlighted here. Safety and health objectives should be clearly defined. Workers should be more involved in safety practices. There should be legal duty on employers to ensure safety. There must be a national authority in every country or county for safety and health. Existing statutory provisions should be followed. Voluntary code of practices should be introduced. The scope of legislation should be extended to include all employees. The existing safety and health inspectors should be amalgamated. New administrative stations should be adopted. Local authority should also cooperate. The interest of public should be safeguarded. Journal fire provisions, precautions should be dealt. The employment medical advisory service should function. So these are the few recommendations of the Robbins Committee in 1970s regarding health and safety, and this was the second international progress after 1802 Act. Okay, the Health and Safety at Workplace Act 1974. After the United States, there was an act introduced in United Kingdom in 1974, which was more or less like that adopted in United States through the Robbins Committee report. And it also provisions this, almost the same clauses as we saw in the Robbins Committee report. Okay, the health and safety practices are in place at certain places like premises of the factory with certain provisions. Like if you are working in a steel mill, then maybe a helmet is mandatory, safety gloves is or mandatory, and health inspectors may visit and check the workers in those mills that whether they are being provided with the safety gear and whether the management is implementing safety policies or not. So for certain places, people have to follow certain safety parameters, and the employer is responsible to implement those. Similarly, there are journal duties. They list comprehensively the duties of all those involved in any way with work activities. The majority of these duties fall to the employer. So a journal duty list regarding health and safety at workplace is issued for every person, mostly for employer, and also secondary responsibility lies with the workers as well. Workers also should be trained and must follow the safety precautions according to the act, which means the law demands the employer as well as from the employee to follow safety precautions. Okay. And what are those duties? To provide and maintain proper machinery, plant, appliances, and work. This must be the duty of the employer. To select properly skilled managers and superintendents. Obviously, this goes to the employer as well. To provide a proper system of working. So, a safe system of working. These are the responsibilities mainly of the employer to be followed in this. Similarly, we say that reasonable practices. Many of the provisions of the Factories Act and similar legislations created specific and absolute duties. So, some student is calling, so excuse me a little while. Okay, G. Welcome back, dear students. So, what we were discussing? Yes. Yes, the Factories Act of 1974, which we just saw, in the United Kingdom, which is quite similar to the Robbins Committee United States report of 1972. And both of these acts emanate from the 1802 First Act after the Industrial Revolution, which safeguards people's interest and their lives from the hazards of the industry in which they are working. So, reasonable practices should be followed as per the Factories Act. It's a similar legislation created specific and absolute duties for both the employer and the employee. But most of these practices are for the employee. Okay, in other words, the greater the risk, the more likely that is it is reasonably practicable to go to substantial expense. Okay, it means that the bigger the risk, the more is the duty of the employer to safeguard the interests of its employees. An invention to remove substantial expenses, trouble, an invention to remove or reduce it. The more the riskier the job, the employer is demanded to spend more money to safeguard its employees. So the Factories Act demands responsibilities as per the nature of the work. Okay. For example, if an employee is working in a metal factory or in a construction industry, it is more risk prone than working in a bank, sitting on a chair from 9 to 5 in front of a computer or on a cash counter dealing with customers. The risk involved in construction industry for a labor or in a steel mill is more than working in an office environment. So the greater the risk, the more investment is necessary from the employer to make policies and to safeguard its employees for risk reduction. Duties of designers, manufacturers, and suppliers. So the Health and Safety Act also covers several acts. You know, it is referring to an act of 1937 that the designers, manufacturers, and suppliers all are bound to follow health and safety precautions of their relevant industry. Every industry in every country, including Pakistan, have a Health and Safety Act in their constitution as well, which was inherited from the British Indian Constitution, and that British Indian Constitution was inherited from the 1802 Factories Act. So Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, all countries follow specific regulations for specific industries. For example, a license of a steel mill or of a civil construction company may be revoked if they do not follow the recommendations issued by the government of Pakistan. And similar applies to all around the country. सो यहाँ पे आप देखें कि डिज़ाइनर्स मैन्युफैक्चरर्स सप्लायर्स ये जितने भी लोग इन्वॉल्व हैं इंडस्ट्री के अंदर उन सब के ऊपर ड्यूटीज़ जो हैं वन वे और द अदर अप्लाई होती हैं टू सेफ गार्ड द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ देयर एम्प्लॉयज़ तो इसी तरह हम आई थिंक आई हैव अनम्यूटेड माय माइक यस ओके इसी तरह से हम स्टूडेंट्स आगे देखते हैं कि हेल्थ एंड सेफ्टी को इम्पोज करने के लिए इंश्योर करने के लिए सिस्टम्स एंड प्रोसीजर का डिफाइन करना भी ज़रूरी है जिस तरह सिस्टम्स एंड प्रोसीजर फैक्ट्री को चलाने के लिए होते हैं फॉर एग्जांपल यू हैव सिस्टम्स एंड प्रोसीजर्स दैट steel mill machinery will start at 9 o'clock. First, there will be molten metal that will be fed to, say, unit number one. Unit number two, persons will cool it down, etc. So there is a procedure defined for working in every factory. Similarly, there should be a procedure for safety as well. And every factory and every industry is mandated as per the Act for, you can see here, preparation and revision as necessary of a written statement of safety policy and bringing it to the notice of all employees. This is the responsibility of the employer. As there is a work policy for the product to be manufactured, same applies to the policy of health and safety at workplace. Consultations with safety representatives. There should be a person that is responsible, a manager should be responsible for ensuring health and safety at workplace. Formation of a safety committee if requested to do so by the safety representatives. And if the work performed by the employees in an organization is quite risky, then there should be a committee, a safety committee, that should look after the matters of health and safety at workplace as per the act of a certain country. Or if the factory is global, I mean it operates in more than one geographical countries, then international law of health and safety at workplace or law of the relevant countries must be followed, and that will be the responsibility of the safety committee. Okay, so every company is mandated as per the Employees Act Section 2(3) to prepare a safety policy. To prepare and as often as many be appropriate, revise a written statement of general policy with respect to the health and safety at work of all employees. Whenever a company gets license to work in a certain country, it has to submit this policy. For example, if a steel mill is started, an automobile manufacturing plant is inaugurated and is registered with HECP and Ministry of Industries and Production in Pakistan, it has to submit certain documents, and one of those documents is the safety policy. For example, are there arrangements of a doctor in a steel mill or an automobile company? Is there any arrangement for firefighters? And what is the safety policy? So that must be submitted at the time of registration of the company. And when the registration is revised every year or after every 3 years, this policy needs to be revised as per law of the relevant country. So finally, we have to do consultation in health and safety. And what is meant by that? We have already mentioned consultation in the context of preparing a safety policy. That's the manager, which is responsible for safety, and the safety committee should be consulted while preparing the safety policy of an organization as per law. We recall also that an employer has a legal duty. We just saw in the Robbins Committee and the 1974 United Kingdom Factory Act that employer is responsible for certain duties. The three which was highlighted in the Robbins Committee were of prime importance. By virtue of Section 2 of the Health and Safety at Work Act, both to consult with safety representatives and to form a safety committee if so requested. Um, so consultation is very much necessary for the safety at workplace of employees. Enforcement. Now, we studied till this page, we studied what is meant by health and safety at workplace, and what are different laws internationally that are applicable to in the industrial organizations and software engineering organizations also included in the industry. The software houses is part of computing industry. So computing is hardware and software. Hardware manufacturers and software houses both are part of computing industry. So these acts also apply to the computing industry as well. Enforcement is the job of government. So government is mandated to enforce these laws. This is the duty of government in the sphere of health and safety at workplace. So we studied duties of the employer and the employee in the previous sections, and now we are going to study the duty of a government or a governing body or a regulation board in a certain country, what they are mandated to do. Although the approach throughout the Health and Safety at Work Act is to foster improvements of standards by consultation and self-regulation, it would be unreasonable to expect that this would be effective in all cases. Accordingly, inspectors appointed under the Act are given wide-ranging powers of enforcement. As we saw that there are traffic regulations, but if there is no traffic police in a certain country, who is going to follow traffic regulations? Making regulations is not sufficient for implementing the law. For enforcing any law, there should be check and balances, and for that check and balances, there should be a department that can perform the duties of policing, like Even in Pakistan, there are different form of police. Like you see, there is highway police, there is custom police, there is frontier constabulary with different job responsibilities. So similarly, even you saw food inspectors, and now the in FIA cybercrime wings, there are cyber force which is responsible for cyber crimes. Similarly, for industries, policing is performed to enforce the law. This is the duty of the government. First, they have made the law, and then for implementation, it is necessary that there should be an inspection department, and that inspection inspectors should be allowed to enter premises at any reasonable time and make examinations and investigations, direct that premises be left undisturbed, make measurements, take samples of articles, etc. So there should be a police that should enforce industrial act. If there is no police in a certain country, then you shouldn't expect that the safety, health and safety at workplace will be fine. For implementing these laws, there should be a department responsible for enforcing, and this is the job of the government. Okay, health and safety commissions and health and safety executives. As I told you that in rest of the chapter, we are going to study the duties of a government. Until 9.4.8, we studied the duties or obligations of employer mostly and little bit of employee. And from this section, we are studying the duties or obligations of the government. First was the enforcement, that there should be a policing, or there should be a department that should inspect these aspects in industries to implement the Industrial Act for safety of workers. Second is there may be a health and safety commission and health and appointment of health and safety executives. The Robbins Committee also highlighted the need of Health and Safety Commission, like we have Higher Education Commission (HEC), and to for the implementation of the higher education policies in the country. So, if there is a Health and Safety Commission at a national level or at a provincial level, then it can devise policies as per the necessity of certain province or country and can implement those by appointing health and safety executives. In every industry, there should be a representative of the Health and Safety Commission that should be a neutral, work as a neutral person. But the duty of that health and safety executive will be to ensure the health and safety of workers in that particular organization. So this was the recommendations in the Robbins Committee in 1972, and such commissions exist in United States, Health and Safety Commission and Health and Safety Executive, as well as the European laws mandate that in every European country there should be a Health and Safety Commission, or the European Health and Safety Commission will do the duties if a particular country in the European Union do not have such a commission. And the laws of European Union Health and Safety Commission will apply to that particular country in the absence of health and safety local commission of a certain county or country. So this consists of three members appointed by the HSC and is charged with implementation the powers of the commission. So in Europe, in United States, three members are appointed as per the size of the industry involved, which are responsible for implementing health and safety regulations. Regulations and codes of practice. Since the inception of industrial health and safety legislation, it came in 1802, as we studied health and safety. First legislation started in 1802, and the second big step was in the Robbins Committee. Then in 1974, the United Kingdom, and then the European Union established the Health and Safety Commission. So, since the inception of industrial health and safety legislation, the relevant enactment have contained provision for the making of secondary legislation or regulation on specific topics. So, according to the industry, like there are special needs of computing industry, which differs from the textile mills industry, and textile mill industry needs differs from the leather industry, and leather industry needs differ from the surgical equipment industry. So every industry have specific needs with specific topics, and the inception of health and safety legislation mandates that there should be a provision of secondary laws for every specific country. Like example in Pakistan of the Cyber Act recently. So, okay, European Commission Health and Safety Provision. As I have just mentioned that there is a European Union level health and safety commission that enforces various laws, which is called EC Health and Safety Provision. And these are uh, covered in single European Act, which is quite similar to the United Kingdom 1974 Act of Health and Safety at Workplace. So European Union is covered in the EC law regulations, and it is continuously to date according to the needs of European Union countries. And if some other industry have to export its products or export its software to the European Union member country, then it has to follow that act, which is quite similar to the 1974 UK Industrial Act. Finally, this is the third part of this chapter. The first part was the obligation of employer and employee to ensure health and safety at workplace. The second part of this chapter was the obligation of government or executive. What are the responsibilities of government to enforce the law and to safeguard the public interest? We saw that it was the policing of different industries to make sure that the Health Act is followed. And then we saw that establishment of a health commission at a national or provincial or county level that may ensure that specific instructions or specific laws for a county is followed by all the industries, and appointment of executive in large industries as a neutral member of their board of directors that may ensure the implementation of health and safety at workplace. So this was the second part of this chapter. So first part related to the obligations of employers and employee, primarily of the employer and secondary, you may say, of employees. Second part of the chapter covered up the obligations of an executive or government, that what is the role of the government in ensuring health and safety at workplace. First, obviously, making of a law, an act, and then enforcing that act. That may be done through a national level commission and appointing of executives. And this is the third part of the chapter, which states that even following all the protocols, all the safety procedures, like duties of the employers and the employee and of the executive, I mean government, making commissions, appointing executives, there is still a chance of error that may result injury or even casualties at the workplace, and that factor is human factor. So there are certain departments in high risk industries like in aviation industry where human factor may result in loss of life of a lot of passengers, like we just saw in a PIA plane crash that due to the error of the pilot, maybe he was not mentally present or was not fresh or was under stress, a lot of precious life were lost. So human factor, and same can may happen in risk prone industries. So this chapter has looked at the legal framework which has evolved in relation to health and safety at work. As we have seen, the current philosophy is one based on assessment of risk, followed by the instigation of control and monitoring procedures. One risk factor which should not be ignored, but which is not always so amenable to precise assessment, is the human factor. Human behavior is not predictable. They do not act like machine or the computer code that do not change with respect to time. A person performing same duty in 10 different days will act slightly differently. They won't act identical. So human factor, there are departments that deal with human factor, like in I have a given stated you example of aviation industry that psychologists evaluate before flight that the pilot is not under pressure. The doctor also check its blood pressure, and they ensure that have the pilot taken the proper sleep, 8 hours sleep, and he's not drunk, etc., etc. So human factors are taken into account in various high-risk industries where human error may result in loss of life or injury to other people. So this is also a factor that should be catered while making a policy for health and safety at workplace. The duties of employer and employee, making of an act and enforcing that act through some means is the duty of the state or executive. And the third thing is the human factor. Despite of all these policies, following all these policies and regulations by the employer and the employee and the government, still there is a room for health and safety through human factor. Okay, the final thing is financial considerations. Undertaking may have a number of objectives, and in many ways, there is no reason why safety should be treated any differently from any other business objective. Obviously, there is a cost of everything, and the same goes to the health and safety at workplace. So, businesses or industries should consider it as an objective, they acquire physical premises, they pay for the safety of their goods, manufactured goods, hiring of guards, and they pay for warehouses, and they pay for marketing, and they pay for delivery, and there are lots of business procedures that they cover in their fiscal budget, yearly fiscal budget. They should also cover the cost of health and safety at workplace, and they should consider it as an objective like all other business processes. This shouldn't be taken something costly for the business, but as a regular business procedure or a business objective, and should be incorporated into the annual fiscal budget of an organization. Okay, what is the corporate liability and manslaughter? So, in the Works Act, it differs from country to country. What is the liability of the corporation if some casualty or accident occurs? Despite the extensive regulatory framework described, accident at workplace and a result of those accidents, occasionally casualties do occur. However, under the law, the penalties are modest up to date, because even following all these regulations, still accidents are a possibility and they may occur. So there are no severe punishments in the law of Industries Act, because then it will hamper the growth of the industry, the cost will rise, and due to risk factor, people will be reluctant to invest in such a country where there are extreme laws or the punishment of corporation is extreme. The international investor will avoid to invest in that country and will go to another country. For example, I was preparing your lecture yesterday, and I saw a case study of Suzuki Corporation Japan, Automobile Corporation Limited Japan, which is out of United States recently. In 2017 or 18, it winded up its business from USA. Why? Because the United States automobile laws are very strict. Now they do not allow less secure cars on their roads, and there was a heavy cost for Suzuki to pay for those safety. Like the Suzuki car, if you see their NCAP ratings, most of their cars, budget cars, come in 3-star or 2-star ratings. So it was out of the US market already. So therefore, Suzuki decided to quit the US market, and now they operate in Mexico due to safety concerns. So it had billions of dollar investment in United States, and it quitted US due to the safety laws. So if you strict the laws in industries regarding safety of the employees, then there is a price to pay. Certain investor will be reluctant to stay in your country, and they will leave your country. The developed nations or the rich nations now may afford to do that, but the developing countries, like mostly in Asia or Africa or in East Europe, they can't afford to do such things. Like there are safety laws for environment nowadays, and when the industrial revolution started, the polluter were the developed nations of today, like United Kingdom and United States. And even today, you see that the global pollution contributors are the advanced or rich countries. but not the poor countries or developing countries, poor countries of Africa or the developing countries of Asia. They are minor contributors, but they cannot enforce environmental safety at workplace as the developed or rich nations have implemented. Because if they do so, then those investors will be highly reluctant to invest in these countries and will switch to some other country. So, uh, corporate liability and manslaughter should be incorporated into the law, considering the economic stability or economic condition of a certain country where it has to be imposed. So this was a very interesting chapter. The writer of the textbook, Frank Bott, has given few references. If you are interested to examine this topic any further, you can look at these books, and there are a lot of case studies available on the YouTube as well, which you are not necessary to see, but as I have given stated examples of these case studies in today's class, which I saw when I was preparing this lecture yesterday. So this was today's lecture, dear students, and I am going to upload this on the channel and will share the link with you and the interactive session. You may ask questions regarding this topic tomorrow in our interactive session, inshallah. So, okay, let me also share with you the notification for academic calendar that we received from UET. You guys already have that notification, but according to this notice, we still have three more weeks. The online classes will continue till 19th February. So we have time to cover three more topics. Our next topic will be, like you see in week 14, professional practices in communication and employee communication, which we will cover from the Sarabis 6th chapter. Health and workplace is covered from chapter 9 today, Frank Bott. And then we have the final topic, cybercrime and cybercrime laws. These are the last two topics which we will cover inshallah in time. So hopefully before the end of the ODL session, 1 week earlier, we will cover our syllabus, and in the last lecture, we will review the course of 16 weeks, and we will also discuss further courses of learning. So wish you all the best, and inshallah, I hope to see you all tomorrow. So I'm stopping the recording.